Hey, at least now we can be finally happy that we're finally up to new stuff. It was fine, though. I think this is another episode that had at least some substance within there, even though, again, a lot of retelling of a lot of stuff we've already seen. A lot of it was from the perspective of Hanyu and Iwe, so that's great. But, yes, my thoughts on episode 13 of Higurashi When They Cry Sotsu. So let's jump into it. So, yeah, this episode opens up with Hanyu confronting Iwe, and, yeah, it seems like she is much more powerful than her, unfortunately, so locks Hanyu in place and kind of forces her to have to watch things as they unfold. And this is obviously the more traumatizing part of this whole thing because, as we've seen before, Hanyu doesn't really necessarily watch what's happening. And a lot of her power given to Rika was to allow Rika to be able to at least see something. And again, this is kind of pushing that idea again that Iwe sees Hanyu as kind of a failure, that she doesn't have as much power as she does. We get a brief new clip where we get to see where Sadako gets up in the restaurant when everybody's being hit by Keiichi, and then eventually goes over and he actually had Keiichi was going to eat Rika's brains, which was kind of a little bit disturbing. He's like, oh, should I have a spoon? Nah, fork would be best. But yeah, this would be the point in which technically Hanyu learns that it's Sadako that is actually behind a lot of this stuff. But yeah, again, hitting it heavy on the idea that Sadako is obviously Rika's best friend, so Hanyu seeing that, Iwe is using Rika's best friend to do all this stuff is just very traumatizing to her, obviously. This jumps to the harvest scene, which thankfully, like I said before, I really didn't want them to drag this scene out again, and thankfully they didn't, so that's fantastic. But unfortunately for this scene, a lot of the focus is really showing the perspective of Iwe forcing Hanyu to have to watch it, using her magic to actually force her eyes open to gaze upon the scene. And before I forget, technically in one of these scenes, these two observations, Iwe points out that Hanyu used her magic to divert the bullet that Takano had fired. And I thought that they were insinuating that that was a miracle, but not something that Hanyu herself created. Because she technically was the one that stood in front of everybody, but I guess diverting it was necessary if it was going to hit somebody specifically. But after the harvest scene, we get the whole scene where Rika is pretty much telling Sadako that she'll never do it again, that she had these two dreams, and she's never going to leave the places again. And yes, obviously, Hanyu is very upset about this. She does not want Rika to accept the world that she does not want. She wants Rika, obviously, to continue to fight for the world that she wanted and that she had lost. And then we go through all the sequences again. Yes, Takanoka apologizes. Jiro basically going to Rika and talking about all the stuff that they're doing behind the scenes. And then we get back to the birth date. And this is the cool part because I remember back when we talked about that particular scene, the birthday scene, in the classroom, the thing that bugged me was that the moment that Rika seen that she had dodged the trap, it didn't make sense to me that she immediately started questioning Sadako. Well, why do you remember? Because we've seen so many scenes where, the first one that we ever had was Keiichi. That's why Keiichi became the miracle of Rika. Because he was breaking fate. He was breaking the time. This is what has to unfold because he was seeing things, and she got hope in the fact that he was able to see his memories. And then everybody else started doing that. We had, Reina was remembering things. Mion was remembering things. So it's not as if this is a new thing. Rika shouldn't be shocked by this. Even though technically most of those cases she'd forgotten after she had died. But she's never questioned it like that. So thankfully, in this retelling of this particular scene, we did get some new nugget of information. It was the fact that Rika started remembering the scenes up into her death. And that's something that she's never had before. She's always had memories up into, but she never had that last bit of information that she technically needed to see, what had happened during that last bit of time. And it does seem like it's Hanyu that is controlling this because Iwe is kind of upset of it, and Hanyu's talking about her power. So Hanyu is, in this point, forcing Rika to get memory. I think that's what it's implying. I mean, it could be Rika just unlocking something that she has, but it seems to be implying that Hanyu herself is giving her that last bit of information that she needs, that last sliver of information she needs, which in this case is most of it's really her seeing like where Oishi was going crazy and shooting everybody, and then Sadako comes up and says, are you dead? Ha ha ha. So At least that finally answers the question of like, why did she jump so quickly on Sadako? It doesn't make any sense. She's always seen people remembering things. So at least with this, seeing that she's responding to the trap, plus this faint memory that she's having of what happens after Oishi goes crazy, is enough for her to piece it together. So yeah, an entire week wait just for this one really fantastic scene to answer something for me. But like I said, I think I'm more excited on the idea that even though, again, a lot of retelling of stuff, thankfully the positive thing there is that unless they just do a reset and we start seeing old memories again, we should be getting new stuff going forward, and that's fantastic. So you have 2 whole episodes of hopefully new content that we can dive into, and I'm excited for it. It was really exciting getting through a lot of this series, but I will admit the last few episodes have been kind of difficult for me to get through, and a lot of that has to do with just not having much to talk about, not much to really think about, besides just speculating more on who Iwa is and her relationship to Hanyu. It does seem like in this episode, Iwa mentions that Hanyu is, regrettably to her, a fragment of her. A failure fragment of her, which, like I said before, I've always speculated that Iwa was going to be probably her daughter, and her daughter has become one of these. But it does seem like right now it's implying that Iwa is like the original, and Hanyu is some sort of broken failure. I don't know if that's just Iwa talking out of her butt, like she's actually just acting like she's some superior thing, and that obviously Hanyu is a failure from her, or if it is a case where, you know, that is the case, and that Hanyu is spawned from her. Like, maybe Iwa is maybe a version of her that was before, when Hanyu herself was sacrificing herself for her with her daughter. I don't know. It's curious. I'm curious where they're gonna run with that stuff. We only have 2 episodes to really work out the situation between Rika and Sadako, as well as trying to, I don't know. It could be a possibility that we don't really find out the origins of Iwa. I know that this story technically does have other arcs with it, so I hope we get some sort of closure. I mean, it's been an entire season of really watching this Iwa gloat and giggle and stuff in the background. I would hope that we get some kind of closure with her as a character, but we'll have to wait and see. But that's my thoughts on episode 13 of Higurashi When They Cry Sotsu. Hope you guys enjoyed my impressions. If you did, leave a like down below. Comment, let me know what you thought of the episode. Subscribe if you haven't already. Share this video if you can. And consider supporting us on Patreon if you can. We definitely appreciate all of our supporters. And y'all take care.